The sun was only beginning to rise over the quiet city, painting the empty streets in shades of pale gold and soft blue. A cold breeze drifted across the bus terminal, moving through the rows of metal benches, rattling the loose papers scattered on the ground, and carrying with it the sharp scent of diesel and morning frost. At this hour, the terminal was almost deserted, just the humming of distant engines, a few street sweepers, and the occasional footsteps of tired workers beginning their day. On one of the benches, far from the entrance and shaded by a flickering street lamp, sat a little boy no older than 3. His blonde hair glowed faintly in the early light, soft and messy as if he'd slept on someone's shoulder all night. His small hands clutched a brown teddy bear, its fur worn down from being held too tightly for too long. The boy's legs dangled above the ground, his socks pulled unevenly, one rolled down around his ankle. His eyes, blue, wide and frightened, stared down the empty road where buses would soon begin to arrive. He didn't cry, not because he wasn't scared, but because he didn't know what else to do. His father had told him to sit still. His father had promised he'd come back. But the cold metal of the bench seeped into the boy's thin body, and the silence around him grew heavier with every passing minute. He didn't know why his father had left so quickly. He didn't understand why the man couldn't even look him in the eyes when he whispered, "Stay here. Someone will come for you." He didn't know that no one was coming. The boy, whose name was Liam, though no one at the terminal knew that, leaned his head against his teddy bear and squeezed it tighter. His breathing trembled. He couldn't move his right leg the way he wanted to. It always felt heavy, stiff, and slow. He had learned to walk with a slight drag, something his father shouted about almost every day. "You walk like something's wrong with you," the man would bark, grabbing Liam's arm too tightly. "Why can't you be normal?" But Liam didn't know what normal was. He only knew pain. He only knew fear. And he only knew that whenever his father was angry, he had to stay silent. Cars passed outside the station from time to time, their headlights briefly illuminating the lonely child on the bench. But no one stopped. No one noticed how young he looked. No one wondered why such a small boy was sitting here before sunrise, holding onto a teddy as if it were the last safe thing in his world. The truth was simple and cruel. His father hadn't abandoned him on accident. He had planned it. For months, the man had been drowning in debt. After losing his job and wasting the little money he had left, he began blaming everything and everyone: landlords, bosses, neighbors, the world, and eventually his own son. The boy's medical appointments, his slow development, his special needs. To the father, Liam was a burden he never wanted. And yesterday, after a shouting match with a lone shark who threatened to break his legs, the man had made a decision. A disgusting, heartless one. "I'm not paying for a kid who can't even walk right," he had muttered while packing Liam's torn backpack. At 4:10 a.m., he drove the child to the bus terminal, parked behind a delivery truck, and yanked the boy out of the back seat. Liam hadn't even finished rubbing the sleep from his eyes before he found himself being dragged across the cold concrete. "Daddy, where we going?" he whispered. "Just sit," the man growled, dumping him on the empty bench. "Stay right here." Liam had reached for his father's coat, confused and scared. "Daddy." But the man slapped his hand away. "Stay." And then he turned around and walked off, his footsteps echoing between the metal pillars. The boy watched him leave, watched the back of the man he trusted disappear through the parking lot glass doors. He waited and waited, but the car never returned. Now, as the sky grew brighter, the world around him began to wake up, but Liam still sat alone, hugging his teddy bear, shivering slightly, too scared to call out for help. A janitor sweeping the far end of the terminal glanced at him once, but the old man's vision was blurry, and his mind too busy with thoughts of rent and unpaid bills to fully process what he'd seen. To him, the boy might have been with someone just out of sight. A young woman waiting for the early bus walked past with her earphones on, glancing at the boy only long enough to assume he was traveling with his mother, who was probably in the restroom. Life moved, people moved, everyone assumed someone else was responsible. Liam's stomach grumbled quietly but loud enough that he startled. He held his teddy bear closer, whispering into its fur. "It's okay, Daddy coming back," he murmured in a tiny broken voice. But even he didn't believe it anymore. The cold wind brushed his cheek again, and a small tear finally escaped the corner of his eye. He wiped it with the back of his hand, trying not to let more fall. He didn't want to be bad. He didn't want his father to be mad if he came back and saw him crying. The minutes stretched into hours. The world became louder. Buses arrived, honking, rumbling, filling the air with the smell of exhaust. People rushed in and out of the terminal, some laughing, some shouting, some talking into phones, some dragging luggage behind them. Still, no one stopped for him. No one questioned the lonely child on the bench. By 7:30 a.m., the sun was fully up. The terminal buzzed with life. Workers, students, travelers, all of them moved around Liam as if he were invisible. Someone even sat briefly at the far end of the bench, busy scrolling through their phone, never once turning their head to see the trembling child a few feet away. Liam's eyes slowly lost their hopeful glow. His breathing grew shallow. His body curled inward as he hugged his teddy bear, his cheek pressed to its soft head. His legs dangled motionless. He didn't even have the strength to swing them back and forth anymore. Then, as a bus pulled into the station with a loud screech of brakes, something happened that would change everything. A man stepped out of the bus, tall, well-dressed, in a clean navy jacket and polished shoes. He carried a leather briefcase, his posture straight and confident, his expression calm. He looked like someone important, someone who didn't belong in a noisy public terminal at this hour. His name was Alexander Hartman, though most people knew him simply as Mr. Hartman, a millionaire, a real estate mogul, a man whose face sometimes appeared on magazine covers, always smiling like someone who had figured out life's puzzle. But at that moment, stepping off the bus in a quiet city he rarely visited, he wasn't smiling. He looked exhausted. His eyes were tired, shadowed by more than lack of sleep. His business deal from the previous evening had fallen apart. A partner he trusted had betrayed him, causing him to lose millions overnight. And though he was still rich enough that the loss wouldn't destroy him, it had shattered something inside him, his faith in people. He had boarded that early bus to clear his mind. Hopping distance would help him breathe again. He took a deep breath of cold air and began walking toward the exit, until something made him stop. A small movement, barely noticeable. From the corner of his eye, he saw a tiny figure sitting alone on a bench. At first, he thought it was just a child waiting for a parent. Then he saw the boy's posture tense, curled inward, clutching a teddy bear as if it were his lifeline. He saw the boy's pale face, the stiffness in his right leg, the way he didn't move even when a loud bus horn sounded. Something inside Alexander shifted. He slowed his steps. He turned fully. And when he truly looked, really looked, his chest tightened. The child wasn't just waiting. He was abandoned. Alexander had seen neglect before, growing up in a broken home. He knew the look of a child trying to be silent because silence was safer. He recognized the fear in the boy's eyes, the way he flinched at loud noises, the way he held his teddy bear with desperate familiarity. He also noticed the boy's right leg, slightly turned inward, stiff, unmoving. A physical disability. And suddenly, Alexander's heart dropped. Because his younger brother had walked just like that before he passed away decades ago. For the first time in hours, the millionaire forgot about his lost money, his business betrayal, and his sleepless night. Something much more important demanded his attention. He approached slowly, not wanting to scare the child. But the boy didn't even look up. Alexander crouched gently to be at eye level, keeping a safe distance. "Hey there," he said softly. Liam's small shoulders jerked. His fingers tightened on the teddy bear. But he didn't run. He didn't scream. He didn't even speak. He just looked up with eyes full of fear, confusion, and something even worse. Hope that hurt too much to hold on to. Alexander felt his throat tighten. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked quietly. The boy looked down. Alexander softened his voice further. "Is your mom here?" Silence. "Your dad?" Liam flinched at the word. That was enough for Alexander to understand. Something was terribly wrong. He moved a little closer and noticed something else. The backpack by Liam's feet, unzipped, with nothing inside except a single juice box and a folded t-shirt. Not packed for travel. Packed by someone who didn't care. Alexander swallowed hard. "Do you know where your dad went?" Liam's lips trembled. His voice came out in the smallest whisper. He said stay." Alexander closed his eyes for a moment. Anger, sadness, memories, everything hit him at once. This wasn't a lost child. This was a child thrown away. He slowly extended his hand, not touching, just offering. "It's okay, you're safe now," he said gently. "My name is Alex, what's yours?" The boy hugged his teddy tighter. Then, in a voice filled with fear and innocence, "Liam." Alexander forced back the sting in his eyes. "Liam, are you hungry?" The boy hesitated, then nodded, just once almost shyly. "Okay," Alexander whispered, standing up with determination. "We're going to get you something to eat." He didn't ask anyone else. He didn't look around for a parent who clearly wasn't coming back. He simply made a silent promise in his heart. He wouldn't leave this child alone. Not now. Not ever. And he had no idea yet how deep this story would go, or how saving this one child would change everything in his life. Forever. Alexander walked slowly at first, giving the frightened child time to adjust, making sure Liam didn't feel dragged or rushed. He kept one hand slightly extended behind him, not touching the boy but letting him know he was near. Liam slid off the bench with small, shaky movements, holding his teddy in one arm while his other hand reached instinctively for the edge of the seat to steady himself. His right leg dragged just slightly, the toes of his socks scraping the concrete every couple of steps. Alexander noticed it immediately. He paused, watching carefully as the boy took another step. Liam winced, just a tiny flicker across his face, but kept walking, trying to hide the discomfort like a child used to pretending he wasn't hurting. Alexander's chest tightened painfully. Who teaches a toddler to hide pain? And why? The terminal was fully awake now, echoing with footsteps, rolling suitcases, conversations, and scattered announcements overhead. But all of that faded behind Alexander as he walked beside Liam. He didn't know why he felt so protective so quickly. He didn't know why the little boy's trembling hand and dragging leg were hitting him so deeply. Maybe because he had once had a brother who walked just like that. A little boy who also waited for a father who never loved him. A child Alexander had been too young to protect and too late to save. He glanced at Liam again, his heart twisting. No child should carry that much fear in silence. "Do you like pancakes?" Alexander asked gently. Liam looked up at him with wide, cautious eyes. I like bear," he whispered, lifting the teddy slightly. Alexander smiled softly. "Pancakes shaped like bears." The boy blinked, surprised that someone understood him, then nodded slowly. "All right then," Alexander said warmly. "Let's go find you some bear pancakes." They reached a small cafe at the corner of the terminal. The smell of freshly baked pastries drifted out through the glass doors, mixing with the aroma of coffee and warm syrup. Liam paused at the entrance, unsure if he was allowed inside. His father had often told him not to enter nice places, especially when they couldn't pay. Alexander leaned down. "It's okay, Liam, you can come." The boy hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The cafe was mostly empty. A tired cashier wiping the counter lifted her head, her bored expression shifting slightly when she saw a small child clutching a teddy bear beside a sharply dressed man. Alexander walked to the counter, but before he could speak, the cashier leaned slightly forward. "Oh, he's adorable, your son." Liam tensed immediately. His shoulders tightened, his eyes dropped, and his grip on the teddy bear turned nearly desperate. Alexander saw all of it, and something inside him responded instantly. "No," he said gently, "I just found him outside. He's alone." The cashier blinked, startled. Her face shifted with instant concern, but before she could ask more, Alexander placed an order: pancakes, fruit, warm milk, and a small chocolate drink for later. Then he led Liam to a quiet corner booth away from the windows. The boy struggled a bit climbing into the seat, his right leg failing to lift properly. Alexander extended a hand without thinking, helping him up. Liam's small fingers curled tightly around Alexander's thumb, but only for a moment before he let go and hugged his teddy again. Alexander sat across from him, not too close, giving him space. The boy didn't look around the cafe. He kept his gaze low, watching the teddy bear's paws as if they were the only things that belonged to him. A few silent minutes passed before Liam spoke, his voice small, shaky, and uncertain. "D-Daddy coming back." Alexander inhaled slowly, burned, saddened, furious. But he kept his voice steady. "Do you want him to?" he asked softly. Liam frowned, confused by the question. Children didn't understand complicated emotions, only what they felt. He thought for a long time, his tiny lips trembling, and then whispered, He get mad if I say no." Alexander felt something inside him break. Not loudly, quietly, like a thin crack in glass spreading under pressure. He leaned forward slightly. "You can tell me anything, Liam. I won't get mad." The boy looked up at him, studying his face carefully, as if trying to measure whether this man meant what he said. Then, "Daddy, he say I slow." Alexander nodded slowly, his jaw clenching. "Is that why he left you at the bus stop?" Liam's breath caught. His eyes filled with confusion and a deep, painful regret. "Daddy didn't want me anymore." Alexander didn't answer right away. The truth hung heavy and ugly between them. He couldn't lie. He couldn't say the father would return, but he couldn't break the boy's heart further either. Before he could find the right words, the waitress arrived with a tray full of food. Warm pancakes shaped like little bears, fresh fruit slices, a glass of warm milk with a smiley face drawn in chocolate syrup. Liam stared at the plate, not with excitement, but with uncertainty, as if he wasn't sure if he was allowed to eat it. Alexander nodded encouragingly. "It's for you." Liam hesitated, then picked up a piece of pancake, extremely slowly, watching Alexander as if waiting to be stopped. When nothing happened, he took a small bite. His eyes widened slightly. A mix of surprise and relief washed over his small face. He took another bite. Then another. Soon he was eating hungrily but quietly, careful not to make a mess, careful not to anger anyone. Alexander watched him, trying to keep his emotions in check. No child should eat like they're afraid. When Liam finally slowed down, his little fingers sticky with syrup, he whispered, "It's good." Alexander smiled. "I'm glad." The boy licked syrup off his fingers nervously, then looked around the cafe with timid curiosity. For the first time since Alexander met him, Liam didn't look terrified, just lost. Alexander cleared his throat gently. "Liam, do you know your last name?" The boy thought hard. Daddy say, we no need name." Alexander froze. What kind of man denies his child a last name? "Do you know where you live?" he pressed gently. Liam nodded. In the loud place with big smell. Alexander's brows furrowed. That wasn't helpful, but the boy lifted his little hands, shaping a square as if describing something. House go boom boom with noises, daddy say it cheap. A rundown apartment, probably near a construction site or a factory. Alexander took a slow breath. Liam, did your father hit you? Liam froze instantly. His tiny fingers curled into fists. Without answering, he pulled the teddy bear closer, turning slightly away as if hiding shame. And Alexander didn't need a verbal answer. He understood. He forced himself to stay calm. If he showed anger, Liam would think it was directed at him. He softened his tone. You don't have to tell me right now, I just want you to be safe, that's all. Finally, Liam peeked up at him with eyes that were too tired for a 3-year-old. Are you gonna leave too? He whispered. The question stabbed straight through Alexander. No, Alexander said immediately. I'm not leaving you. Liam blinked rapidly, his breath catching, his throat tightening as if the words triggered something deep inside him. And for the first time, a little tear slipped down his cheek. Alexander reached into his pocket and offered a napkin. Liam took it with tiny hands and wiped his face, embarrassed, trying to hide the tears. The millionaire leaned forward. Listen to me, Liam. What happened today, it wasn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Liam wiped harder, suddenly breathing shakily, tears dripping faster now, as if someone had finally opened a locked door inside him. Alexander reached out slowly, placing his hand on the table, palm up. He didn't touch Liam. He simply offered. Liam stared at the hand for a long time. Then, with trembling fingers, he placed his tiny hand on Alexander's palm. It was a fragile touch, tentative, scared, uncertain, but it was the first moment of trust. Alexander closed his hand gently around the child's small fingers, swallowing the lump in his throat. You're safe with me, Liam, I promise you that. A silence settled around them, heavy with emotion. After a few minutes, Liam sniffled and pulled his hand back to hug his teddy again. Alexander let him, understanding the boy needed something familiar to hold on to. Then Liam whispered something that broke the last piece of Alexander's composure. Why daddy no love me? Alexander closed his eyes. He inhaled sharply through his nose. His jaw tightened so hard his teeth hurt. But when he opened his eyes again, his voice was steady and warm. Some people don't know how to love, he said softly. But that has nothing to do with you. You are worth loving. You deserve love. Liam's small chest rose and fell, slow and shaky. Alexander reached across the table again. Liam, do you want to come with me? The child stiffened. Not out of fear, but uncertainty. He hugged his teddy so tightly, its stuffing compressed. Daddy, say no go with strangers. Alexander nodded. Your daddy was right about that part, but I'm not a stranger anymore. I'm someone who wants to help you. Liam stared at him. Help, he whispered. Yes, Alexander said gently. Help you walk better, help you feel safe, help you eat and sleep and not be scared anymore. Liam looked down at his hands, then at the teddy bear, then at his legs. I'm broken, he whispered. Alexander shook his head instantly. You're not broken, Liam, you just need care. The boy breathed out shakily. And love, Alexander added softly. That word, love, made Liam freeze completely. As if he had never heard someone say it kindly. Alexander's voice softened even further. I don't know what your father told you, but you deserve someone who will stay, someone who won't leave. The boy's lips parted, trembling. Like you. Alexander felt something warm and fierce bloom in his chest. Yes, Liam, he said quietly, like me. The child stared at him for a long moment. Then he slowly slid out of his seat, dragged his right leg carefully, and came to Alexander's side. Without asking permission, without saying a word, Liam lifted his arms, reaching up. Alexander understood immediately. He lifted the boy gently, feeling how light he was, too light, the weight of a child who had missed too many meals, too many hugs, too much care. Liam rested his head on Alexander's shoulder, still clutching his teddy bear with one hand while the other curled into Alexander's shirt. Alexander placed a steady hand on the boy's back, supporting him securely. Liam whispered into his shoulder, so softly Alexander almost didn't hear it. "Don't leave me." The word stabbed straight through Alexander's chest. "I won't," Alexander whispered back. "I promise." And as he held the trembling, exhausted child close, he made a silent vow. He would find the man who abandoned this boy. He would find the truth about Liam's past. He would fight for this child with everything he had. And he would never, ever let him be hurt again. The airport terminal felt different in Alexander's arms than it had moments ago. The noise, the announcements, the shuffling of feet, none of it mattered anymore. Everything narrowed down to the small, trembling child clinging to his shirt, as if the entire world could rip him away again. Alexander held him carefully, one hand supporting the boy's back, the other under his legs, feeling the uneven weight distribution caused by the limp in his right side. Liam was too light, too tense, too used to bracing for the next moment of rejection. Alexander walked slowly, not wanting the child to feel rushed. Liam's head rested against his shoulder, the soft blonde strands brushing Alexander's neck. Every few seconds, the boy's fingers tightened in his shirt, as if checking to make sure he was still there, that Alexander hadn't faded into smoke like everything else dependable in his life. Alexander approached a quieter section of the airport, away from crowds and rushing travelers. He stopped near a row of large windows overlooking the runway, where the morning light poured inside like a warm veil. Liam stirred slightly at the shift in brightness but didn't lift his head. "Liam," Alexander said softly, "I'm going to sit down, all right?" The boy nodded against his shoulder, a tiny movement. Alexander lowered himself into a cushioned bench, settling Liam gently on his lap. The child didn't let go, he simply repositioned himself, curling against Alexander's chest, his teddy bear pressed between them. Alexander felt the boy's heartbeat, fast, scared, fragile, like a small bird learning to breathe again. For a long time, they sat in silence. Then Liam's voice, barely audible, You not mad?" Alexander stroked his back lightly, mindful not to frighten him. "Why would I be mad?" Liam hesitated. His small fingers tightened in Alexander's shirt again. "Daddy, he get mad when I talk too much, or cry, or walk slow, or when I sleep too long, or when," his voice cracked painfully. Alexander closed his eyes. He forced his anger to stay silent, deep inside where Liam couldn't feel it. He wouldn't let even a shadow of fury touch this child. Not when Liam had only known anger as a weapon. "You don't have to be afraid of talking to me," Alexander said softly. "You can tell me anything. I'm not going to be upset." Liam shifted slightly, his cheek brushing against Alexander's chest. "Daddy say I make trouble." Alexander's voice dropped into a deep, steady calm. "You're not trouble, Liam. You're a child. Children deserve care." Liam swallowed hard. "Daddy say if I get lost, nobody want me, 'cause I walk wrong." Alexander felt his jaw tighten, his breath shaking for the first time. He pressed his palm gently to Liam's back. "Liam, listen to me," he said, his tone low and firm. "Walking differently doesn't make you unwanted, it makes you human and brave." "Brave?" Liam repeated, sounding surprised. "Yes," Alexander said. "You're still here, you're still fighting, that's bravery." Liam didn't answer, but his head leaned more heavily against Alexander, as if the words carried a warmth he had never received before. After a moment, Liam lifted his face slightly, his cheeks damp. "Alexander, what gonna happen now?" Alexander looked down at him. Now, he said gently, we figure out how to help you, how to keep you safe, how to find out who you really are. The boy blinked confused. I'm Liam. Yes, Alexander said carefully, but someone must have given you a full name when you were born. A mother, a family member, someone. Liam shook his head slowly. Daddy say she gone, and no one want me. Alexander felt a slicing ache. Your father is wrong, he said firmly. You deserve someone who wants you. Liam hesitated before whispering, You want me. Alexander paused. He could have given a simple answer. But what he felt was far deeper than a simple reassurance. The moment he found Liam on that bench, something inside him had shifted. Not just sympathy, not just responsibility, something more powerful, a protective instinct he hadn't felt since he was a child himself. Yes, Alexander said quietly, I want you safe. I want you cared for. I want you with someone who will never leave you behind. The boy's breath trembled and he hid his face again. Can I stay with you? Alexander's heart clenched painfully. If you want to, yes. But first we need to understand where you came from and why your father left. Liam's body stiffened just slightly, a tiny tremor. Daddy leave 'cause I slow. No, Alexander said firmly, but gently. Your father left because something is wrong with him, not with you. Liam didn't argue. Instead, he lay still, silently absorbing the unfamiliar kindness. Alexander looked out the window, thinking. He needed to contact authorities, not to hand Liam over blindly, but to start the process of protecting him properly. He needed information. He needed to find medical help for the boy's leg. He needed to find out if anyone else in Liam's life cared about him. But first, he needed to make sure Liam wasn't afraid. He shifted the boy gently so he could see his face. Liam, do you trust me? The question seemed to catch the boy off guard. Trust wasn't a concept he understood easily. He looked down at his teddy bear, rubbing the worn fabric with trembling fingers. After a long pause, You stayed, Liam whispered. Yes, Alexander nodded. You didn't yell. I won't. You not leave. I'm not leaving. Liam's eyes softened in a way that made Alexander's throat tighten. Then, yes, I trust you. Alexander felt something deep and warm settle inside him, a vow forming even before he could articulate it. But he didn't speak it yet. Liam touched his own leg suddenly, a small flinch of discomfort crossing his face. Does it hurt? Alexander asked gently. Liam shrugged as if unsure he was allowed to admit it. Sometimes, Daddy say it my fault, 'cause I fall when I was little. Alexander nodded slowly. That's not your fault, Liam. Injuries happen, children fall, adults are supposed to help. Liam tilted his head. Daddy said, doctors too much money. Alexander bit back a sigh. You need a doctor to see what's going on with your leg. The child stiffened, fear flashing instantly. Doctors, they make me sleep. Not unless they have to, Alexander said calmly, and I would stay with you the entire time. That seemed to ease some of the tension. But first, Alexander continued, I need your help with something. Do you know if your father has friends? People he talks to, a job? Liam thought for a long time. Daddy talked to loud men in small green place. They smell like smoke. Alexander's eyes sharpened. A bar, likely one of the rundown ones near bus routes, maybe dangerous. Did he take you there? Alexander asked quietly. Liam shook his head. He say I too slow, I stay in room, alone. Alexander inhaled sharply, abandonment layered upon neglect. Did he leave you alone often? Liam nodded. How long? Sometimes sun go up, then down, then up again. Alexander froze. He left the child alone for full days. Alexander swallowed his fury, keeping his expression soft for Liam's sake. You were very brave, he said. You shouldn't have had to be, but you were. Liam leaned his forehead against Alexander's chest again, exhausted. What now?" the boy whispered. "Now," Alexander said softly, "we go somewhere safe." "Your home?" Liam asked, hopeful. "Yes," Alexander said, "my home." Liam tightened his grip on the teddy bear. "Daddy, he won't come." Alexander paused. "Liam, if he comes, he won't take you away. I won't let him." The boy's eyes widened, as if he couldn't understand how anyone could stop the man he feared. "But he big," Liam said quietly. "So am I," Alexander replied, his voice steady. The boy studied him for a long moment, and then slowly, shyly, he rested his hand on Alexander's cheek. A small gesture, but one filled with a child's desperate need for reassurance. You safe man," Liam whispered. Alexander nodded once. "Yes, I am." Liam breathed out shakily, accepting it. Alexander stood, holding the child carefully, and began walking toward the airport exit. Outside, his black car waited where his driver, Marcus, stood watching with curiosity. Marcus opened the back door, his brows lifting slightly at the sight of the small child snuggled against Alexander's chest. "Sir," Marcus began cautiously. "This is Liam," Alexander said simply, his tone allowing no questions right now. Marcus nodded immediately, understanding the boundary. Alexander climbed into the back seat, settling Liam beside him. The boy's legs stretched awkwardly across the seat, and he winced. Alexander quickly placed a folded jacket under Liam's knee to cushion it. Liam whispered, "Thank you." "You're welcome." As the car started moving, Liam looked out the window, confused by the luxury around him. The soft leather seats, the quiet hum, the tinted glass, all foreign to him. He turned to Alexander. This your car?" "Yes." "You rich?" Alexander smiled softly at the innocent question. "I have money, yes." Liam hesitated. "Daddy say rich people bad." Alexander's eyes softened. "Not all of them." "You not bad," Liam whispered. Alexander felt his heart twist. "Thank you." Silence settled again, comfortable this time. Liam leaned against his arm, slowly growing sleepier with each passing minute. His body finally began to relax, the way children do when they finally feel safe. Alexander draped his arm around him gently, supporting him. A few minutes later, Liam spoke again, his voice fatting with sleep. "Alexander, when we get home, can I have bed?" "Of course," Alexander said quietly. "Your own room, your own bed." "Soft bed," Liam murmured. "Yes, the softest. And maybe light on. I scared dark." Alexander pressed a soft kiss to the top of his head, something natural, protective, and deeply emotional. "The light will stay on," he whispered, "as long as you want." The boy's breathing slowed. Within seconds, he was asleep. Alexander held him close, looking down at the small face now softened by rest. Liam's lashes were long, his cheeks flushed from exhaustion. His tiny fingers still gripped the teddy bear tightly. A child abandoned. A child neglected. A child unloved until now. Alexander looked out the car window, his jaw set with quiet determination. Whoever Liam's father was, whatever past he carried, whatever monsters had hurt this child, Alexander would not allow them near him again. Not now. Not ever. And for the first time since finding the boy, Alexander admitted to himself what he already felt deep inside. He wasn't just protecting Liam. He was falling in love with him, the way a father loves a son. And nothing in the world would take that away. The sun had dipped lower, pulling long shadows across the quiet hospital hallway as Lucas sat outside the room where the little boy, Evan, had been admitted. The doctors had finished their immediate assessments hours ago, but tests were still running, monitoring his blood sugar, dehydration, oxygen levels, and the condition of his weakened legs. Lucas had spent most of the day packing the corridor, replaying every detail, every expression on the child's face, every broken sentence he had managed to gather before Evan drifted into sleep. Something about the boy had carved itself deeply into him, not in a fleeting or momentary way, but with the weight of a responsibility he didn't fully understand yet. He had found the child abandoned at a bus stop, but that wasn't the part haunting him. It was the way the boy had clung to the teddy bear, the way he whispered, "Daddy will come back, I think," like a child trying to convince himself of something he already knew wasn't true. Lucas leaned back against the wall, rubbing his face with both hands. He had made fortunes, built empires, bought entire companies on a whim, but nothing in his life, no business deal, no financial downturn, no betrayal, had ever made him feel this unsettled. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. A recognition of something he couldn't yet articulate but felt deeply. Maybe it was because he, too, knew what it felt like to be left behind. Maybe because the child's helplessness reminded him of a version of himself he thought he had buried long ago. Or maybe because Evan's eyes, blue and heavy with questions, looked painfully similar to someone from his past. No, he shook that thought away. Coincidence, that's all it was. Just as he closed his eyes, trying to settle the storm forming inside him, a soft voice broke the silence. "Sir." Lucas looked up to see the pediatric specialist, Dr. Amara Shah, approaching with a tablet in her hand. "How is he?" Lucas asked immediately, standing straighter. Dr. Shah sighed softly, not with hopelessness but with careful consideration. "Stable for now. He was severely dehydrated, his blood sugar was dangerously low, and his muscles are showing signs of progressive weakening." Lucas frowned. "Is it permanent?" "It depends." She pulled up the scans. "We believe Evan has a congenital condition that affects his legs. It's not uncommon, but without consistent physical therapy and medical care, the muscles weaken faster. If he had been receiving proper treatment earlier, he could have retained more strength." Lucas's jaw hardened. "So whoever abandoned him," the doctor continued gently, "hadn't been taking care of him properly for a long time." Lucas clenched his fists. The anger that rose in him wasn't loud or explosive. It was cold, solid, and controlled. The kind of anger that came with understanding exactly how much this child had been failed. "Will he walk?" he asked quietly. "With therapy, braces, and regular follow-ups, yes, he has a good chance." Lucas nodded, more to himself than to her. "And emotionally?" he asked after a second. Dr. Shah hesitated. "That depends on what happens next. He's been through severe abandonment trauma. Children internalize that. They don't see it as 'Dad left me.' They think Dad left because something is wrong with me. Rebuilding that trust in the world takes time." Lucas swallowed. That hit far closer than he expected. "Can I see him?" he asked. The doctor smiled gently. "He's awake now, and he keeps asking if the man from the bus stop is still here." Lucas entered the room quietly, careful not to startle him. The lights were soft, dimmed against the setting sun filtering through the window. Evan sat propped against pillows, tiny hands gripping the teddy bear's ears tightly as if afraid it might disappear too. When he saw Lucas, his eyes lit up, not with excitement but with relief. A fragile relief, like someone realizing they hadn't been forgotten after all. "You came back," Oven whispered. Lucas felt something twist deeply inside him. "Of course I did." The boy swallowed. "People don't usually come back." Lucas sat next to the bed, lowering himself slowly. "Well, I'm not people. I made a promise." Oven nodded, his bottom lip trembling just a little. There was a long silence before Oven spoke again, voice trembling at the edges. "Do you think he's looking for me?" Lucas knew who he meant. He also knew the truth. But a lie would be cruel, and the truth, at least the blunt version, would break the boy further. "What I know," Lucas said carefully, is that none of this is your fault. Oven's eyes glistened. But Daddy said I was too slow, that I make him tired. Lucas swallowed a sharp breath. The sentence felt like a punch. Not because it was cruel, though it was, but because it echoed something he once heard in his own childhood, spoken by someone he had spent years trying not to remember. He forced his voice to stay steady. Oven, listen to me. Being slow doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you a burden. And it definitely doesn't make you unlovable. Whoever made you feel that way was wrong. Oven looked up at him, searching his face, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. Then why did he leave? The boy whispered. Daddies don't leave unless. His voice cracked. Lucas placed a hand gently on his small arm. Some adults, he said softly, make bad choices, horrible choices. They hurt people even when those people did nothing wrong, but that doesn't mean those people deserved it. Oven blinked rapidly, trying not to cry. Lucas inhaled slowly. And you deserve the world, you hear me? The boy nodded weakly. Are you going to leave too? Oven asked suddenly. Lucas froze. In every business negotiation, every courtroom, every board meeting, he always had the perfect answer ready. But here, faced with a trembling child clinging to the last thread of trust he had left, Lucas had nothing rehearsed. He answered from instinct. No, he said, I'm not going anywhere. Oven's eyes widened, not fully believing him but wanting to. Lucas leaned closer. I'm here as long as you need me. That was the moment the boy finally let the tears fall, quietly, silently, leaning his tiny head toward Lucas, as if seeking protection, warmth, something safe. Lucas gently brushed his hair back and stayed with him until he drifted off again. Later that night, Lucas stepped outside the hospital to take a breath. The sky was dark now, dotted with stars, and the cool breeze helped shake off some of the heaviness pressing against his chest. He hadn't planned any of this. He was supposed to go to a meeting, review contracts, sign merger papers that would make him even wealthier. Instead, he found himself caring about a boy he had met less than a day ago. He didn't know what the future looked like for Oven, but he knew this. The boy had no one. No family to claim him. No home to go back to. No parents searching for him. Except, Lucas frowned suddenly. There had been something odd, something he couldn't ignore anymore. The shape of the boy's face, the shade of his eyes, the subtle curl of his hair. Traits he recognized. Traits he had once seen in someone else. Someone whose memory still lived in a locked part of his heart. Someone he had loved and lost years ago. No. His mind raced. It couldn't be. Could it? He closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. If what he was thinking was even remotely true, then Oven wasn't just a random child abandoned by a neglectful father. He might be connected to Lucas in ways he never imagined. The world suddenly felt smaller, ta-ta. He had to know the truth. He had to. When he returned to the pediatric wing, he saw a nurse walking out of Oven's room, adjusting her clipboard. Is everything okay? Lucas asked. She smiled. He's sleeping peacefully, should be stable through the night. Lucas nodded, relieved. But before the nurse walked away, she said, Oh, and we found something in his clothes, something that might help identify him. Lucas's heart jumped. What is it? She handed him a small, crumpled envelope. One glance at the handwriting on it, and Lucas's blood froze. He knew that handwriting. He had seen it thousands of times. In letters, in notes, in promises written by someone who had once meant everything to him. It couldn't be real. Hands trembling, Lucas opened the envelope. Inside was a photo. Not of Oven, but of a woman. A woman Lucas had spent years trying and failing to forget. a woman who had disappeared from his life without explanation. And beneath the photo, scribbled faintly, were words that made Lucasa's entire world tilt. "He's yours." Lucas staggered back as the truth crashed over him like a tidal wave. Oven wasn't just any abandoned boy. He was Lucasa's son. And the man who abandoned him wasn't his father. He was just the last person the boy had been left with. Lucas gripped the photo, his breath shaking. Everything changed. Everything. And what he would do next would shock everyone, including himself. For a long moment, Lucas couldn't move. The hallway around him seemed to blur, the hospital lights melting into one long smear of white as the reality settling in his hands pressed down like a physical weight. The photograph trembled between his fingers, her face smiling softly, eyes full of warmth, the same eyes Oven had inherited. His breath hitched. He hadn't seen her in nearly 7 years. They had met when he was younger, Roke, before he became a millionaire, before he built everything. She had been the one grounding part of his world that wasn't connected to money, power, or ambition. They had planned a future until she vanished without a word. He searched, hired investigators, waited for calls that never came. After months turned into years, he convinced himself she must have left by choice. But now, this photo, this envelope, this child, and those words, "He's yours." His knees nearly buckled. Why didn't she tell him? Why did she disappear? What happened to her? And how on earth, did his son end up with a man who abandoned him at a bus stop? Questions crashed inside him like waves in a storm, but there was no time to drown in them. The boy inside that room, his boy needed him. Lucas wiped at his face, his jaw setting into a fierce, determined line he hadn't worn in years. He wasn't letting that child out of his sight ever again. The next morning, Lucas was already awake when the sun broke over the horizon. He hadn't slept. Instead, he spent the night researching, calling private investigators, pulling strings through contacts he hadn't used in years. If the world thought Lucas Hale was relentless in business, they were about to see a version of him far more formidable. By the time the doctor returned for morning rounds, Lucas had already arranged a private room upgrade, hired a full-time nurse, and requested every file and test result associated with Evan's case. Dr. Shah looked both impressed and slightly overwhelmed. "You've been busy." "I'm not leaving anything to chance," Lucas said, eyes sharp. "I figured as much," she replied gently. "And how are you feeling about everything?" Lucas exhaled slowly. "You mean since discovering he's my son?" Her brows lifted. "Yes." He leaned back against the chair. "Like my entire world makes sense and doesn't make sense at the same time." "I understand." She hesitated, then added, "Children like Evan often grow attached to the first consistent, safe adult they encounter. Given what he's been through, he might cling to you." "Good," Lucas said instantly. Dr. Shah blinked. "Good. He can cling to me all he wants. I'm not going anywhere." There was no bravado in his voice, just quiet conviction. After she left, Lucas walked into the room and saw Evan awake, small fingers absently rubbing the teddy bear's ear. When he noticed Lucas, he brightened, not cautiously but fully, trustingly. The way only a child who finally feels safe can react. "Hi," Evan said softly. "Hi," Lucas replied, sitting beside him. The boy hesitated. "I had a dream you were gone." "I'm here," Lucas assured, "and I'm staying." Evan relaxed, the tension in his tiny shoulders melting away. Lucas watched him carefully, the way he held himself, the faint tremor in his right leg, the small scar near his eyebrow, and the resemblance kept hitting him over and over again. This boy was his. Nothing in the world could pull him away now. Hours later, after lunch, the social services representative arrived, a stiff-looking man with a clipboard who seemed entirely focused on procedure. "Mr. Hale, we appreciate your involvement, but until we identify the child's legal guardians—" "That won't be necessary," Lucas interrupted calmly. The man blinked. "Sir, with respect, it is necessary." Lucas held up the envelope. "His mother was someone I knew, someone I loved, and she left this message saying the boy is mine." The representative reached for it, but Lucas pulled it back. "You'll get a copy," he said, "not the original." The man's lips tightened. "Still, DNA testing will be required." "Already arranged," Lucas said coolly. "My team is setting up lab processing this afternoon. And before you list the rest of your requirements, housing, financial stability, medical support, save your breath." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents: proof of income, proof of home ownership, professional references, security clearance, and a personal letter of responsibility. The representative stared, visibly stunned. "You did all this overnight?" "I'm a father," Lucas replied simply. "I don't wait." The man swallowed. "Well, there's still custody procedures." "Then start them today." The representative scribbled notes while nodding quickly. "Yes, sir. Immediately, sir." As he left, he whispered to another nurse, "This might be the fastest case I've ever handled." Lucas didn't care about speed. He cared about one thing only, that Evan never felt abandoned again. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Evan asked, "Can I draw something?" Lucas blinked. "Of course." He fetched paper and crayons from the nurse's station, then sat beside him as the boy began sketching with intense focus. For several minutes, Lucas simply watched, fascinated by how the child's brow furrowed in concentration. When Evan finally finished, he held it up shyly. It was a simple drawing, childlike, unsteady lines. There were two stick figures. One small, one tall, both holding hands. And beneath them, in uneven letters, "Me and Lukas." Lucas's chest tightened painfully. Not Daddy. Not Sir. But Lucas, exactly how the boy pronounced it. He swallowed. "Can I keep this?" Evan nodded shyly. "It's for you." It took every ounce of Lucas's control not to let his voice break. "Thank you. I'll keep it forever." The boy smiled. A real smile, bright and full, something Lucas had not seen yet. Something bloomed in his chest, warm and fierce. This wasn't just obligation. This was connection. Bond. Family. 2 days passed. During that time, Lucas barely left the hospital. He helped feed Evan, sat with him through therapy, read books aloud, laughed at the child's jokes, and whispered reassurance whenever old fears surfaced. And then the DNA results arrived. The doctor handed him the envelope. For a moment, Lucas stared at it, breathing slowly. He had already accepted the truth. The paper was merely confirmation. He opened it. Positive. 99.99%. He wasn't surprised, but he still felt his knees weaken. Evan was his son. His blood. His responsibility. His chance at redemption. He walked into Evan's room and sat beside him. "Buddy," he said softly, "I have something to tell you." Evan looked up, eyes wide. Lucas took a breath. "Did you know that family isn't just people you're born with? It's people who stay, people who protect you, people who love you." Evan nodded slowly. "Well," Lucas whispered, "I found out that we're connected in a very special way." "How?" Evan asked, clutching his teddy bear. Lucas's voice softened. "Because you are my son." Evan froze. His eyes widened, then trembled. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He stared at Lucas, not with fear but with disbelief. And hope. So much hope. Your son, the boy whispered. Yes, Lucas's voice cracked. My son. Evan's eyes filled instantly, overflowing before he could stop them. For real. Lucas nodded and opened his arms. The boy didn't hesitate, not even a heartbeat. He threw himself forward, burying his face into Lucas's chest, clinging to him with desperate, shaking hands. Lucas wrapped him tightly, one hand cupping the back of his fragile head, the other holding his small body as though anchoring him to the world. I got you, he whispered, voice breaking. I got you. I'll never leave you, never again. Evan sobbed into him, quiet, muffled sobs of a child finally understanding he isn't unwanted. Lucas held him through every tear, through every tremor, through every emotion that poured out after years of fear. And in that moment, something inside Lucas healed too, something he didn't realize had been broken. His heart had someone to beat for again. Weeks passed. Evan's therapy progressed. His legs grew stronger with braces and support. Lucas bought a special designed home setup, hired the best pediatric physiotherapists, and spent hours each day helping Evan practice standing, stepping, reaching. And every night, after brushing teeth and tucking him in, Evan whispered, "Good night, Daddy." Every single time. Lucas felt the words wash over him like a miracle. One evening, months later, Lucas stood outside the physical therapy room as Evan took his first independent step. Just one. But it was enough. The room erupted into cheers. But none louder than Lucas's heartbeat as he ran forward, knelt, and caught the boy in his arms. Evan giggled, bright, joyful, alive. Lucas lifted him, spinning him just slightly. You did it. Evan wrapped his arms around his neck. I did it because you stayed. Lucas's voice broke. I'll always stay. Forever. The millionaire who once found a broken, abandoned child at a bus stop became the father who rebuilt him piece by piece. And the boy who thought he was unlovable became the greatest treasure Lucas ever found. Their lives, intertwined by fate, cemented by love, became a story that shocked the world, inspired millions, and proved one truth. Sometimes the family you never knew you had is the one destiny brings to your doorstep when you least expect it, but need it the most.